Cedric Diggory had never understood the appeal of it. Not in the way his friends talked about it in hushed whispers in the common room. Voices laced with excitement and bravo. He'd heard stories, some exaggerated, some likely true, and he never felt what they did. It wasn't that he disliked it, it just never moved him in the way it seemed to move others. Until Wayan. Wayan had always been different from anyone that ever come across Cedric. Perhaps that was why he fell so hopelessly in love. Their laughter was contagious, and their presence was like a fire in a dim-lit corridor of Hogwarts. They challenged him, teased him, and softened him in ways he never knew he needed. And he adored them for it. It had started with a lazy afternoon in the Hufflepuff common room. The fire crackled gently, sending flickering shadows across Cedric's sharp features. Wayne had curled up next to him, the head resting against his shoulder as he had an arm draped around them, his fingers absently tracing patterns on their sleeve. "You're quiet," Wayne murmured, voice laced with sleepiness. Cedric smiled. Just thinking." Wayne looked at him. "About?" He hesitated. He wasn't sure how to explain it, the strange disconnect he had. It wasn't something he had ever really talked about, because what kind of person didn't enjoy it? He always assumed there was just something wrong with him, some missing piece that kept him from understanding the pleasure that others took in it. But Wayne never pushed. They never made him feel inadequate, never made him feel like any less of a person because he wasn't, enthralled by something most people considered an intimate thrill. So maybe, just maybe he could tell them. "I just don't think I enjoy that," he admitted finally, voice barely above a whisper. Wayne shifted up to look at him, their eyes patient and soft. That?" they asked, questioning. He swallowed. "You know, like down there." Wayne blinked, finally understanding. "Oh, okay, you don't have to." He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "I know, it seems like everyone is so into it, but I've never felt anything special." Wyatt considered that for a moment, before nudging him playfully. "Maybe you just haven't had the right experience." Cedric chuckled. "You offering?" Wyatt grinned. "I might be." There's a tilting glint in their eye, but their expression remained sincere. They had never been the type to push or prod or demand. If he said no, they would accept it without hesitation. That was what made them, well, them. And for some reason, with Wyatt, he wanted to try. It happened later that evening, when they were alone in his dormitory. The golden glow of the candle lights, painting the golden room with warm hues. The anticipation hung between them, but not in a way that made Cedric nervous. He trusted them. "Are you sure?" Wayne asked, fingers resting against his knee, their voice a whisper and quiet. Cedric nodded. "Yeah, I am. I trust you." That was all Wayne needed. And maybe it was because it was them, because they weren't trying to prove anything or rush him into something that he wasn't ready for. But from the very first touch, it was different. They couldn't even explain it. Wayne was just different. There was no urgency, no pressure, just patience and care. They were deliberate in their approach, watching him, reading him, learning him. Every touch, every shift of their lips was meant to feel, rather than just do. And for the first time in his entire life, Cedric felt it. It wasn't just sensation, it was connection. The warmth of their skin against his as they moved with rather intention than expectation. It sent a shiver down his spine, something deep, almost unnameable, stirring in his chest. He wasn't just experiencing something, he was experiencing them. His fingers threaded through their hair, a sharp gasp leaving his lips before he even realized it. The sound seemed to encourage them, their hands squeezing his thighs, gently grounding him. It was overwhelming, but not in a way that made him want to stop. If anything, it made him want to hold on to them tighter. His breath hitched. He had never felt like this before. Never like this, never with anybody else. His fingers curled into the sheets, deep and trembling, a sigh escaping him. He let himself feel, really, fully feel. For the first time, Ryan didn't rush, didn't demand. They just gave slow and deliberate and careful, attentive patience. It was dizzying, it was intimate, and Merlin did he love them for it. When it was finally over, he felt weightless, his mind hazy, his heart racing. Ryan crawled up beside him, pressing a gentle kiss to his flushed cheeks. Their eyes searching his, a quiet question in their gaze. Cedric exhaled a soft laugh. "I think you've changed my mind," he says, breathless, his thighs still twitching. Ryan grinned. "Told you." He shook his head, still breathless, still overwhelmed, his arms wrapped around them, pulling them close until they were nestled against him, their warmth bleeding into his skin. "Thank you," he murmured, pressing a lingering kiss to their temple. Ryan hummed. "For what?" "For showing me that it could be more than just an act." The night lingered in Cedric's mind, long after it had ended. It wasn't just the physicality of it, though that had been undeniably new, undeniably good, but the feeling of trust, of closeness. Ryan had just given him something that he hadn't even realized he was missing. The chance to feel without pressure, without expectation, without experience, and now he couldn't stop thinking about it. Not that that was new. Ryan had always been a permanent fixture in his mind and thoughts since the moment they met, but now there was an added layer to it. When he looked at them, he didn't just see his partner, his best friend. He saw someone who had reshaped him, who had changed him and molded him into something that they wanted, something that he once thought was set in stone. So naturally, he found himself staring at them all breakfast. The next morning, his chin resting on his palm as he watched them talk animatedly with some fellow Hufflepuffs. They were always so alive, so effortlessly warm in a way that made people gravitate towards them. It was something Cedric loved about them, and had always loved about them. Ryan must have felt his gaze because they turned to look at him, a teasing smile played on their lips. "What?" Cedric blinked, suddenly aware that he had been caught. He straightened, clearing his throat. "Nothing." Ryan arched a brow. "You're staring." "I'm not," Cedric defended. Yeah, you are. You definitely are." A slow, knowing smile spread across their face, and Cedric felt his ears burn. He quickly reached for his goblet, taking a sip of the pumpkin juice to hide his embarrassment. Ryan leaned in, their voice low enough that only he could hear. "Thinking about last night?" they asked. Cedric choked on his drink. Ryan burst into laughter, slapping a hand over their mouth to muffle it, while Cedric coughed up on his sleeve. The other students at the table gave them an odd look, but Ryan simply waved them off, amusement shining in their eyes. When Cedric finally regained control, he shot them a glare, though it was impossible to have any real height behind it. "You're impossible," he stuttered out. Ryan beamed. "And yet you adore me." That was the problem. He did adore them, more than anyone he'd ever adored before. And he wanted to show them. The thought lingered with him all day, growing stronger with every glance and every touch, every casual movement they spent together. It wasn't just about reciprocation, though he certainly wanted to return the favor. It was about the fact that Wayne had made him feel something new, something that he wanted to give them that too. The opportunity presented itself one evening. In the quiet of his dormitory, most of his roommates were scattered across the castle, either sitting in the library or causing mischief somewhere else. It was just him and Ryan, curled up together on his bed. The warmth of the candles flickering against the stone wall. Cedric shifted, popping himself up on one elbow as he gazed at them. They looked so at ease here, as if they belonged in his space just as much as he did. And maybe they did. Ryan glanced at him, their eyes soft. "What's on your mind?" they asked. Cedric hesitated before speaking. "I want to try." Ryan blinked. "Try what?" they asked, a bit confused. He swallowed, his fingers brushing against their wrist. I want to do what you did for me." Their expression shifted, amusement flickering across their face before something warmer settled in. "Cedric, you don't have to." "I want to." He cut them off. That made them pause. Cedric wasn't someone who did things out of obligation. If he didn't want something, he didn't do it, and Ryan knew that. So when they searched his face and found nothing but sincerity, they nodded. Okay." That one word sent a shiver of anticipation down Cedric's spine. This was new territory for him, uncharted and uncertain. So he let his instincts guide him. He moved slowly, carefully, watching for any signs of hesitation as he pressed his lips to their jaw. He felt them exhale slowly, their fingers curling against his arm, encouraging him. He trailed kisses along their skin, savoring the way they melted. It was different from last night, yet somehow it was the same because it wasn't about the technique, it wasn't about getting it right, it was about them, about giving it right back, what they had given to him. And the way they respond, the soft sounds, and the way their fingers tangled in his crimson hair, and the way they whispered his name like it was something precious. This was intimacy, this was trust, and this was love. By the time he had pulled away, his heart was pounding, his breath slightly uneven as Ryan looked up at him dazed. The lips parted. Cedric smiled, brushing at them against their cheeks. "How was that?" he asked. Ryan let out a breath. "Bloody fantastic," they said, trying to catch their breath. He chuckled, pressing a kiss to their forehead before settling beside them. They curled up easily, their bodies fitting together as though they belonged. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, just existing in each other's presence. Then Ryan shifted, tilting their head up to look at him. "So, you still think you don't enjoy it?" Cedric hummed. "I suppose I could be persuaded." He laughed, pulling them into a very, very sweet kiss. He never thought he would understand or enjoy this sort of thing. But with Ryan, he understood everything. And Marilyn, he was glad he let them show them.